Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerdmodon, and I'll be doing a gameplay commentary over some Battlefield 4. For this particular episode, I'll be speaking a little bit about the beta, just talking about some of the significant things that have been going on, and of course, some of the information will be additional information that is new to you, but at the same expense, some things will be reiterations of what I've done in previous episodes. To start off with, guys, you guys are going to be noticing that I'm going to be using the Z-10W attack helicopter for the Chinese fraction. I've really been enjoying the attack helicopter. I've talked about it many times. I like the movement and I like the stability. And that's two things that Battlefield 3 just didn't have for the attack helicopters. It was really effective about blowing stuff up, killing a lot of players on one quick run or maybe doing a circle strafe, but you never know. I mean, it was something that just wasn't very mobile. I mean, you had to be really, really good at flying it to actually take full effect of the vehicle. And in Battlefield 4, I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like you can kind of get away with hitting a wall every once in a while. It's not an instantaneous, malfunction. You don't just self-destruct in midair, of course. And it's a little bit more versatile against destroying actual infantry units, but at the same expense destroying vehicles. Especially as the pilot, in Battlefield 3, you didn't get a whole lot of XP. You barely got anything. You kind of did all the work, you did everything that you could, but unfortunately your gunner was the one that got all the points. He was the guy that would go 80-5, and while you did all the work, because you're the one controlling the vehicle and also setting him up for those amazing kills, you probably only went 11 kills during the entire game. And that was unfortunate, that kind of sucked. But in Battlefield 4, that's not the case at all. I mean, you guys have seen I can drop pretty good scores overall. I can destroy a lot of vehicles, I can get right in there, do what I need to do, and considering that the gunner no longer plays a viable role in the actual destruction of the opposition, as an attack helicopter pilot, you actually have the capability of destroying vehicles, attack vehicles, anything like that. You have the ability to actually disable those transport vehicles with no problem. And that's not something that you could commonly do back in the day. And you wouldn't, get those 6-man feeds like you do commonly now. Just because of, I guess, people not knowing that they're on fire, but at the same expense not knowing, when to jump out, of course. And a lot of the time that leads to a pretty good outcome, especially with those transport choppers. Now, again, ground vehicles are pretty easy to destroy with the attack helicopter. If you hit every shot on it, you hit them in the viable zones, you can usually disable them in one strafe run with the 14 rounds that it commonly comes associated with the attack helicopter. But, if you need to turn around, you can definitely just do a quick 180 and get right back in the action and finish off the opposition, of course, with your gunner kind of assisting hopefully a little bit of cover fire. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'll be flying around having a good time. I really enjoy the attack helicopter. I think it's become probably one of my favorite vehicles. And I imagine hopefully in the final release of the game, there will be a lot more opportunity for me to shine, especially in that category with a pretty standard amount of frames and no stutter. Now, quickly, since we did talk a little bit about frames and stutter, that leads me into talking with you guys about a couple of things that I don't think is too prevalent to every single person. And that's okay. I mean, I don't claim by any means necessary, and please believe me, I'm not a coder, I'm not a scripter, I don't know what it takes to make the final version of the game, and I don't even imagine what it could take to make a beta that upholds millions of players at any given moment. I have no clue, and I don't claim to have any idea, but DICE has came out and said a few things that, made me start thinking, made me do a little bit of research, and believe it or not, a lot of them add up to be pretty successful answers, and a lot of them make a lot more sense than what people on Reddit or YouTube or whatever are just talking about. And that's to be expected, of course. They are the people that made the game. It only makes sense, they have more of a clue what's going on than people that took one class in high school about coding or something, or graphics design, and is like, this is what's wrong with the game, I promise you. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not that easy. If it was that easy, there'd be a lot more good games that came out every year, but unfortunately there's only about 5. So take that with a grain of salt, of course. But anyway, guys, I want to quickly talk about maybe why there's frame rate and stutter. Of course, there's a few things on Reddit. There's a few threads that people think that they've debugged it and they've fixed the problem, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It increases your performance, of course. I'm not going to, give them guys any less credit. I mean, it does give you about 25 more frames, but unfortunately that stutter is not something that it looks like you can directly fix, at least. As many of you guys have probably figured out, your CPU in Battlefield 4 is actually occupying 100% of it. No matter how good it is, you are using the entire thing, which is not good. That's not something that you're commonly seen with video games. You don't usually see your games taking up your entire CPU priority, which is interesting, needless to say the least. And a lot of people have came out and said that for the graphics cards, it's actually using a low amount of the graphics setting, which would lead my statement to say, why your CPU is using so much is because the CPU is having to pull all the information to satisfy the graphics. Even if you guys have played the game on ultra settings, you will realize that this game doesn't look finished. There are so many things that just do not look quote-unquote ultra'd because they just don't look quote-unquote beautiful enough. Battlefield 3 looked gorgeous. It was one of the best looking games. It won so many awards that it's unbelievable. Even for a 2-year-old game, it still beats games out even now. Games that are being released this year, Battlefield 3 is still better than them. In the department of graphics, of course. Gameplay, probably so. I don't know. I guess that's just dependent on what you think of games in the FPS category, of course. But a lot of the stutter and issues like that are coming from the sheer fact that our CPUs are being, generated at a higher rate than commonly, and that's leading the game to not look as great, but it's also adding a lot of frame rate and stutter issues. And that's to be expected, I guess. A lot of people have came out and said, well, it's a beta, and that's their defense mechanism, which isn't a bad statement to say. I'm not taking anything away from those guys. Believe it or not, this game actually had to program for a total of 5 platforms. What games do you know that's had to do that in the past? Of course, with this year, there'll be a lot of games that platform or, program for 5 platforms. May that be PC, Xbox 360, Xbox One, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4. That's a lot of programming, and most of them don't even use the same architecture. Could you imagine programming for a game that doesn't add up at all? Each console, at least in PlayStation's category, don't even use the same architecture. PlayStation 3 uses a different one, and PlayStation 4 uses a different one. Xbox will use the same one because it's a successful, architecture. And PC, as far as my knowledge, also works on the Xbox side as well. They're kind of a good family over there since they are Microsoft generated, of course. But, of course, there'll be slight differences here and there. PC will probably have a little bit better graphics for the final release of the Battlefield 4 official game. But, you kind of expect that. It's a PC. Everything looks better, especially on that kind of platform. And that's not really something that, people always want to agree on, but it's something that's a little bit more of a true statement. Now, anyway, guys, a lot of the issues, that we're having right now, especially for console and PC, at least for that category of the beta, are in reference to the sheer fact that they had to program for older consoles. You got to realize your console's 7 to 10 years old. That makes sense why you're having those problems, and that also makes sense to why the PC side of it is having some minute changes. It's definitely not the most smooth thing in the entire world. But this is all bound to get better. It's going to become the best experience. It's going to probably become one of the best games in 2013/14 going on for the next 2 years. And I look forward to seeing what will happen. But I'm looking interested to see what you guys will have to say. Let me know in the comments below if you guys agree with anything I said or if you guys have different outlooks on it. But this has been NMO, guys, and I'll be signing out. Peace.